We begin with the country's monkeypox watch. Health officials report 2 new additional cases of the viral disease. Carolyn Bonkin gives us the details.
The Philippines is now reporting a total of 3 monkeypox cases. On Friday, the health department reported 2 more infections. The second case is 34 years old who tested positive on August 18. The patient is in home isolation and officials are looking for the patient's close contacts. The third case is 29 years old who tested positive for monkeypox on August 19th. Health officials have so far found 17 close contacts. The patient is currently in a health facility but has been cleared to complete 21-day isolation at home.
Yun pong lesions, hindi na matandaan din actually nung ibang pasyente kung saan nagsimula. Consistent naman na meron sila sa mukha, ibang parte ng katawan in their areas na sensitive.
Both have travel history to separate countries with confirmed monkeypox cases where they could have been infected.
Based on our initial analysis, mukhang ito pong mga kasong na-detect natin are still imported, no? Yung kaso po ay nanggaling sa ibang bansa. But we are continuously evaluating and we are doing our surveillance.
But DOH officials are not dismissing the possibility of other undetected monkeypox cases.
The possibility of other cases still not being detected, maaari. Pero maiiwasan natin yan kung ang ating mga kababayan agad-agad nagpapakonsulta.
The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Thursday reports over 40,000 monkeypox cases from 94 countries with 12 deaths. While most monkeypox infections are seen on men having sex with men, a World Health Organization official says there are sporadic cases among heterosexual male and female, like those with multiple sex partners, and even among children.
Some of whom are adolescents, age 15, 16, 17, who may also be engaged in sexual activities, and then a small number of cases in children under the age of 10 or under the age of 5. At the moment, these remain sporadic cases.
WHO officials say the human-to-dog monkeypox transmission reported in Paris is new but not surprising. Health agencies are now asking those infected to stay away from animals to prevent possible onward monkeypox transmission. Caroline Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
Just 3 days to go before classes begin, AC Nichols gives us a look at how the Education Department plans to keep students safe from COVID-19.
Over 27 million elementary and high school students are enrolled for this school year. Most of them in public schools that are set for school opening on Monday.
Mas maayos na po yung pag-aaral ngayon kasi face-to-face na po.
Excited na po ako makapag-aaral sa emails. Gusto ko lang pong matuto sa mga guro.
Mas matutunan ng pansin ng mga teacher yung estudyante.
Almost half of all basic education schools are expected to hold full face-to-face classes beginning next week, though some of them will still keep on with blended learning until it becomes a must to hold full in-person classes come November. Just about 1% or 1,000 schools will stay in purely remote learning setup. The Education Department says 92% of all teaching and non-teaching staff are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. However, the vaccination rate among students is merely 19%. This figure, though, is based on enrollment data from last school year. Officials argue that more students may have been inoculated since.
We would all like 100% vaccination rate. The truth of the matter is the vaccination program of the national government is not mandatory. That's why kahit na po ganyan ang ating numbers, again, we will not discriminate. We will just have to strictly observe yung ating minimum health and safety standards para po sa seguridad ng ating learners, pati na rin po ng teaching and non-teaching staff.
The DepEd says a total of 3.7 billion pesos has been allotted for public schools nationwide. This is for additional miscellaneous operating expenses, including items for health protocols such as face masks and alcohol. Teachers, meantime, get to receive an additional 5,000 peso cash allowance.
Yan po ay para makatulong sa kanila sa preparation din nila for the upcoming school year. Marami po nagsasabi na pinagbibili nila ng chalk and all that. Yun po ay hindi po yun. Yung mga chalk and all that should be part of the MOOE of the schools. Itong 5,000 po, lalo na yung mga kailangan ng mga internet connection, dyan po lang nila, parang additional allowance lang po talaga yan for our teachers.
The DepEd says it will issue new and updated guidelines for COVID-19 infection control over the weekend. AC Nichols, CNN Philippines.
As education officials craft guidelines to prevent COVID-19 among students, a center urges the department to let schools suspend classes should there be an outbreak. Amor Santos has the story.
Although schools have until November to transition to face-to-face learning, the Education Department tells lawmakers most public schools are expected to hold in-person classes starting Monday, August 22. More than half will do it 5 days per week, while others will implement a mix of face-to-face and distance learning.
We're only expecting around 10% will still continue with the online learning because of some challenging situations brought about by lack of classrooms and of course the devastation of calamities.
We are continuing to study the implementation of blended learning as a permanent mode of instruction for basic education. However, come November 2, the full implementation of 5 days in-person classes is expected as well for all public and private schools.
Based on Department Order Number 34, students who test positive or show COVID-19 symptoms will be excused from in-person classes. But during a Senate Basic Education Committee meeting on Friday, Senator Nancy Binay asks,
may magti-trigger na kailangan shutdown muna yung eskwelahan or shutdown muna yung classroom.
Dun sa Department Order 34, malinaw po at it was clearly mentioned there that regardless of the alert level in any area, classes will continue.
Binay says temporarily closing down schools may be necessary in case of outbreaks, just like what happened in the Senate. Binay is the 7th senator to catch COVID-19 in a span of 3 weeks. The Senate will go on lockdown for thorough disinfection on Monday. Employees will be working from home.
Baka mas maigi na meron ding mekanismo yung DepEd or baka may leeway ang ating principal or teacher na magdesisyon kung kailangan mag-declare ng no classes, lalong-lalo na pag madami na dun sa mga estudyante ang nagkakasakit.
Binay also wants to look into the funding for free COVID-19 testing. DepEd says it's being discussed by schools and local government units. Amid concerns about the low vaccination coverage of students, Minority Leader Coco Pimentel praises DepEd for not forcing it on learners and their parents. For Senator Pia Cayetano, DepEd should be creative in convincing parents to bring their children to vaccination sites. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Up ahead, as shoppers go in a last-minute rush to buy school supplies, the Trade Department is making sure there is no overpricing. And the Transportation Department warns commuters in and around Metro Manila of a looming shortage of beep cards. Keep it here on Newsnight.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
back to CNN Philippines. First, suspected sugar hoarding, now a possible sugar smuggling. The Customs Bureau on Thursday intercepted at the Subic port a cargo vessel from Thailand with more than 7,000 metric tons of refined sugar. That's about 140,000 bags, which the Office of the Press Secretary says had a total tax payment of 45.6 million pesos. Customs officials say the crew presented recycled import documents. They vow to investigate those behind this importation cycle and file charges if necessary. The suspected contraband follows a raid of warehouses in Pampanga and Bulacan. The operation yielded thousands of Thai sugar sacks believed to have been hoarded by importers. Officials say the sugar stock is worth around 220 million pesos. The government is giving owners 2 weeks to prove they have legal documents. Otherwise, they may face hoarding and smuggling charges. Some welcome news for consumers. Expect a price drop in sugar next week. The Office of the Press Secretary says owners of the biggest supermarkets have agreed to lower the suggested retail price, or SRP, from 90 to 110 pesos per kilogram to 70 pesos per kilogram. Carrie Cator tells us how the private sector is trying to help farmers in other ways.
The private sector is not sitting back as the country feels the pinch of low sugar supply. Go Negosyo founder and former presidential advisor Joey Concepcion says efforts are underway to strengthen the agriculture sector.
Pinag-aaral pa namin yung agriculture kasi talaga sa contract growing, contract farming ay mahirap. Dapat balansehin natin yung interest ng farmers.
Concepcion says the Private Sector Advisory Council will present its plans to the President as soon as it is ready. The council hopes to tap more industry leaders to champion agriculture products, including sugar.
Bawat agriculture crop, pipili kami ng isang lead, tutulong rin sa amin para gumawa ng framework.
Concepcion is supporting the plan of President Bongbong Marcos to import up to 150,000 metric tons of sugar to protect both farmers and consumers, while Trade Secretary Alfredo Pascual is vowing to explore more options with supermarkets lowering the retail prices. The business expert believes more conscious efforts should be given to the agriculture sector, but he sees no need for a full-time secretary in reaction to the call from Senator Risa Hontiveros.
I think the President is getting there. He just wants to make sure na kasi mahirap yung agriculture.
Carrie Cator, CNN Philippines.
As classes begin next week, shoppers are rushing to buy school supplies in malls, bookstores, and Manila's bargain haven, Divisoria. The Trade Department visited stores to make sure there is no overpricing. Paige Javier reports.
Julianne Bravo spent her Friday morning buying school supplies for her son, an incoming grade 4 student. She admits she's on a tight budget.
Iba pong price po niya, medyo mataas, ma'am. Kumpara po sa mga dati pong niya price. Kung ano lang po muna, ma'am. Binabudget ko lang po yung namin ngayon, ma'am.
Julianne and another shopper shared why they prefer to buy in this establishment.
Dito na rin po ako nagbili po, simula pa rin po ng elementary hanggang high school po. Hanggang sa magtapos po ako na pag-aaral. Mas maganda po kasi dito kasi hindi siya crowded, unlike sa Divisoria. Mapamura ka pero siksikan naman.
This Caloocan bookstore is one of 2 places inspected by authorities Friday to check their compliance with the latest suggested retail prices. Trade officials found products like notebooks, ball pens, and pencils lower or within the SRP. But in one popular bookstore, one item was overpriced.
Mostly compliant naman po sila dun sa gabay natin, our guide for school supplies. Although meron tayo ding LOI na isa, dahil yung writing pad po for grade 1, yung 80 leaves, mas mataas ng 2 pesos.
Even before getting the letter of inquiry, the area manager says they will adjust the shelf tag to reflect the correct price.
Kung hindi nila pinalitan yung price, meron naman tayo under the Price Act ng mga provisions. Of course, we can always look at the provisions on illegal price manipulation.
In Divisoria, the volume of shoppers has picked up compared to last week. Vendors say most of their prices are the same, except for notebooks, which are low in supply. Notebooks now range from 17 to 20 pesos compared to 15 pesos last week. Despite the crowds, many shoppers say they still prefer to visit Divisoria.
Mura mas mura. Dito sila mamili kaso masikip nga lang. Tsatsagaan nga lang.
Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
Students set to begin their daily commute next week for in-person classes may have a harder time purchasing beep cards used to store money for trains, buses, and ferry fares. Our George Quiles tells us why.
The Transportation Department says there are now a limited number of stored value cards available for commuters. This is due to the supplier's failure to replenish the cards. Stored value or beep cards are reloadable, contactless smart cards used in paying rail transportation fares in Metro Manila. A beep card with 70 pesos preloaded credits is sold for 100 pesos.
Talagang nahirapan silang makapag-produce ng aming pangangailangan dahil yan sa pandemic. Doon naman sa isang pinagkukuhanan sa Russia, nanggagaling po doon yung isang component or isang gas na ginagamit sa pagpapabricate ng microchips. Yan pong microchips, yan ang inilalagay doon sa beep card. So ngayon, dahil doon sa giyera, naapektuhan din po yung supply nila.
With this, the agency is reminding existing users to take care of their cards, with more passengers expected to avail of beep cards ahead of the resumption of face-to-face classes next week. Despite the problem, the MRT3 management says they are already prepared for the opening of classes. Students may avail of the 20% discount on single journey tickets at designated booths at MRT stations.
Kami po ay nagbibigay ng assurance na hindi kakapusin itong single journey ticket as compared dito sa stored value. So ang talagang may problema lang ay yung stored value.
The MRT3 will also re-implement its passenger segregation policy starting Sunday. This means the first two doors of the first car are dedicated to senior citizens, persons with disability, pregnant, and passengers with children, while the last three doors of the first car are exclusively for female passengers. The rest are open for all. Meanwhile, over at the LRT Line 2, students may avail of the free ride starting Monday until November 5. They just need to present their school ID or their registration form and another ID at the passenger assistance booths to get their free ticket. George Quiles, CNN Philippines.
Other news, lawmakers from the United States visiting detained former Senator Laila de Lima. They secured court permission to see her today at the Philippine National Police Custodial Center in Camp Crame. The Muntinlupa Regional Tri-Court Branches 204 and 256 granted the extremely urgent motion filed by the congressional delegation led by Senator Edward Markey. They were barred from visiting de Lima yesterday because they did not have court permission to do so. U.S. senators have called on the Philippine government to release de Lima and to drop her remaining drug charges after some witnesses recanted their testimonies against her. Getting into China is like entering a fortress as it imposes some of the world's toughest lockdowns because of its aggressive zero COVID-19 policy. Tristan Naldalo, who is in Beijing for a 3-month study grant, takes us there.
After enduring 10 days in a centralized quarantine facility in Guangzhou province, south of China, and passing the daily RT-PCR test requirement for foreign travelers, we were finally given the go signal to enter Beijing. This is Guangzhou Baiyun International Airport. Travelers here only need to present a QR code showing that they have been cleared for travel by health authorities. China seeks to boost its local tourism despite the strict COVID-19 measures.
Dito medyo mas maluwag na yung mga tao nakamask na lang. Hindi sila naka-PPE. Tapos yun, may mga nakikita na rin tayong mga local travelers.
From Guangzhou, it's a 3-hour journey to the capital. second day in Beijing and it's business as usual in some major financial hubs in the city. Slowly, establishments are opening up, restaurants, banks, and shopping centers are rising back to life again. But before anyone can enter these areas, one must ensure that they are COVID-19 free. COVID testing is almost second nature. Testing booths are available in almost every street in the city. Everyone with a Beijing health code can walk in and get tested.
Papakita mo lang yung code, pagkatapos pipila ka na agad. At pagkatapos tuloy-tuloy na yung proseso na yun. So napakadali, convenient para sa kanya.
Despite the challenges brought by the dynamic COVID-19 policy and its long-term impact to the world's second largest economy, China maintains it is on the right track in terms of economic recovery. From Beijing, China, Tristan Odado, CNN Philippines.
When we return, the NBA star Jordan Clarkson arriving in Manila tonight while Kai Soto is already back in town, both gearing up for a FIBA qualifiers window. And Blackpink's comeback single finally arrives. You're watching CNN Philippines.
Ito ang RBN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
Welcome back. American tech giant Apple has warned its users of a vital flaw in their operating system. According to the company, iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers all share a vulnerability that may be exploited by hackers. Apple has since fixed this fault and advised all users to update their software for protection. Moving on to sports, Filipino-American NBA star Jordan Clarkson is expected to arrive in the country tonight to train for his Gilas Pilipinas stint. In an interview with CNN Philippines Sports Desk, Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas Executive Director Sonny Barrio said the Utah Jazz player will begin practice tomorrow for the fourth window of the FIBA World Cup Asian qualifiers. On to another prized Pinoy cager, Kai Soto landed in Manila last night. The Australian Basketball League athlete wrote on his Instagram story, "I'm home." Kai will also compete under Gilas, which is set to face Lebanon on August 25th. In the PBA Philippine Cup Finals for the first time in over a decade, the TNT Tropang Giga and the San Miguel Beermen will clash for the league's most coveted title. Defending champion TNT is bannered by last season's finals MVP Mikey Williams, and the Beermen are determined to reclaim the crown after their historic five-peat reign ended in 2020.
Honestly, very difficult, and this is just being as objective as possible. If you take a look at the lineup and how deep and how strong the other team is.
Kung kaya namin manalo ng
6 Philippine Cup. So pipilitin namin, but napakahirap eh. Dahil alam naman natin na yung Death 5 namin kulang na eh. Pero we're trying our best na to be cohesive. And maraming bagong players, so they're still learning how to be a competitive team, especially in playing the championship.
Game 1 tips off on Sunday at the Araneta Coliseum in Quezon City, but TNT Tropang Giga will play 2 matches without head coach Shot Reyes. Veteran mentor has duties with Gilas Pilipinas with the FIBA qualifiers against Lebanon next week and versus Saudi Arabia on August 29th. These coincide with games 2 and 3 of the All-Filipino Conference set on the 24th and the 26th. But the SVP says it is a sacrifice they're willing to make.
There's a bigger calling at this point. No? It's flag and country. And I think we as an organization has always been ready to answer to that call. No? In the past, TNT players were answering to the call.
Reyes says this is an opportunity for the Tropang Giga to prove that they can play well without their head coach. And before we go, the long wait is over. Blackpink's newest single, Pink Venom, has arrived and is pulling out all the stops. Pink Venom is the lead single for their forthcoming album. Here's a sneak peek.
Bring the pain like this, that pink venom, this, that pink venom, this, that pink venom. Get 'em. Straight till you don't like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Straight till you don't like, Taste that pink venom, taste that pink venom, taste that pink venom. Get 'em. Straight till you don't like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Straight till you don't like,
The group's album, Born Pink, is set for release on September 16. And that is it for tonight. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia HONTIVEROS for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Ito ang RPN.